The sun hovered mercilessly over the hills, turning the sprawling estate into a furnace of white stone and glass. The digital thermometer mounted discreetly near the terrace doors blinked 104 degrees Fahrenheit, but Maya Collins barely noticed. Sweat clung to her temples as she pushed the mop forward, the marble floor reflecting her tired face back at her like a quiet accusation. 27 years old. 2 degrees unfinished. 3 part-time jobs once. Now just this one full-time position that barely held her life together. The mansion was silent in the way only extremely wealthy homes were. No clutter, no laughter, no signs of living. Just the low hum of climate control systems and the distant splash of water cycling endlessly through the infinity pool outside. The kind of quiet that made you feel smaller if you stayed in it too long. Maya straightened her plain gray uniform, smoothing invisible wrinkles as she glanced through the glass doors. The pool shimmered in impossible blue, sunlight dancing across its surface like liquid glass. It looked unreal, like something from a luxury magazine, not a place meant to be real or touched. Her employer, Ethan Blackwell, had been gone for nearly a week. His executive assistant sent a brief email, extended overseas meetings. Do not expect Mr. Blackwell back until next Thursday. That gave Maya 4 more days alone in a house that felt more like a museum than a home. She had memorized every inch of it over the past 18 months, every corridor longer than her childhood apartment, every imported sculpture worth more than her annual salary, every room she cleaned but was never meant to linger in. She worked quietly, efficiently, invisibly. That was the expectation. That was the rule. Maya wiped her forehead again, her arm aching as she leaned the mop against the wall. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and her heart tightened instinctively. Hospital numbers always made her stomach drop. Dad's blood pressure dropped again, the message read. Doctor says the next few weeks are critical. She closed her eyes. Her father, once a construction foreman with hands like iron and laughter that filled rooms, now lay tethered to machines in a public hospital across the city. Insurance had run out months ago. Savings followed shortly after. Maya had left her graduate program 2 semesters before completion when the diagnosis came. Advanced kidney failure, complications stacking like falling dominoes. She worked 60-hour weeks now. Sometimes more. Always tired. Always afraid. The pool caught her eye again. The water looked cool. Inviting. Peaceful. She glanced around instinctively, her heart racing, not with desire, but with something closer to desperation. The cameras on the terrace had been shut down that morning for scheduled maintenance. She'd watched the technician herself. No alarms. No surveillance. No one around for miles. Just 5 minutes, she thought. 5 minutes to remember what it felt like to exist outside survival mode. Her hands trembled as she unbuttoned her uniform, folding each piece carefully on a lounge chair as if the neatness might somehow justify what she was about to do. The air kissed her skin hot and dry, and goosebumps rose anyway, fear and excitement tangling together. She stepped to the pool's edge, toes curling against the smooth stone. And then she dove. The cool water wrapped around her like mercy. Maya gasped, the shock stealing her breath before relief flooded in. The heat vanished instantly. The ache in her shoulders softened. For the first time in weeks, her body stopped screaming. She surfaced slowly, pushing wet hair back as she floated on her back, staring up at the endless blue sky. The world narrowed to the sound of water and her own breathing. In that moment, she was no one's employee. Not a struggling daughter. Not a woman drowning in medical debt. Not someone constantly measured and dismissed. She was just Maya. Her eyes closed as sunlight warmed her face. Her hair spread around her like ink in water, and a soft, almost forgotten feeling stirred in her chest. Peace. She didn't hear the car pull into the garage. Didn't hear the side door open. Didn't see the tall figure freeze beneath the pergola, briefcase slipping from his hand. Ethan Blackwell had returned 12 hours early. The transatlantic deal he'd flown overseas to secure had collapsed spectacularly at the final hour. Investors backed out. Lawyers stalled. Millions lost in a single afternoon. Exhausted, irritated, and craving silence, Ethan had boarded the earliest flight home without informing anyone. He expected emptiness. What he didn't expect was this. He stood motionless, heart pounding, staring at the pool like it had suddenly become something sacred. His housekeeper, the quiet woman who had worked for him for nearly 2 years, the one whose name he barely spoke, floated peacefully in his pool as if she belonged there. Maya. He knew her name, of course. It was in his payroll system. But he realized, with a sharp sting of discomfort, that he knew nothing else. Not where she lived. Not her story. Not the weight she carried every day. She looked different like this. Younger. Softer. Free. The constant tension he now realized she always carried in her shoulders was gone. The worry lines he'd subconsciously noticed while she worked were absent. For the first time she wasn't invisible. Ethan should have turned away. Should have announced himself immediately. Should have left and pretended none of this happened. Instead he stood there, breath caught, something unsettling stirring in his chest. He took a step back, finally deciding to retreat, and his elbow struck a decorative ceramic urn. The crash shattered the silence like a gunshot. Maya's eyes flew open. She gasped, instinctively sinking lower into the water, arms crossing over herself as panic exploded through her veins. Her heart slammed against her ribs as she turned toward the sound. And there he was. Ethan Blackwell. Her boss. Billionaire CEO. Owner of the house. Owner of the pool she was floating in. "Oh my God, sir," she whispered, horror washing over her face. I didn't know." "I'm so sorry," Ethan said immediately, turning away, hands raised. "I should have announced myself. This is my fault. Entirely." Her uniform lay folded on the chair several feet away, suddenly feeling impossibly far. "I need to leave," Maya said quickly, humiliation burning her skin hotter than the sun. "Please forgive me. This won't happen again." "No," he said firmly, still facing away. "Please. Take your time. I'll go inside. This never happened." He walked away before she could respond, leaving her trembling in the water, shock and shame crashing over her in waves. She climbed out quickly, hands shaking as she pulled on her damp uniform, fabric clinging uncomfortably to her skin. Her face burned as she gathered the broken ceramic pieces, crouching on the stone floor. But beneath the humiliation, something else lingered. In that brief second before he turned away, there had been no anger in his eyes. No disgust. Only something dangerously close to awe. 2 hours passed before Maya gathered the courage to knock on the study door. Ethan sat behind his massive desk, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up, staring at nothing. "Come in," he said quietly. Maya stood stiffly near the doorway. "Sir, I understand if you need to terminate my employment. What I did was unprofessional." He studied her for a long moment before speaking. "How long have you worked for me?" 18 months. Almost 19. "And I just realized today," he said slowly, "that I don't know anything about you." She blinked, confused. "That's not being busy," he continued. "That's being careless." The word surprised them both. He stood and walked to the window overlooking the pool. "You work harder than anyone here," he said. "Why?" The question pressed against her chest. "My father is sick," she said finally. "I'm paying his medical bills." Ethan turned, something shifting in his expression. "Why didn't you tell me?" "You're my employer," she replied quietly. "Not my rescue." Silence stretched between them. Then he said something neither of them expected. "Have dinner with me tonight." Maya froze. "Not as your boss," he added quickly. "Just 2 people." Every instinct told her this was dangerous. But loneliness answered first. "Yes," she said. That single word changed everything. The dinner that changed everything. And the eyes that began to judge her. Dinner arrived just after sunset, the sky melting into deep shades of orange and violet beyond the infinity pool. Maya stood at the edge of the terrace, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, wondering for the 100th time why she hadn't found an excuse to leave. Every logical part of her brain screamed that this was a mistake. Lines were being crossed, lines she had spent her entire adult life carefully respecting. Ethan, on the other hand, seemed uncharacteristically nervous. He had ordered food from a private chef he trusted. Simple, elegant Italian dishes instead of the extravagant multi-course meals he usually entertained investors with. They sat across from each other at the long outdoor table, the soft glow of lanterns casting warm shadows across their faces. For a moment, neither spoke. It was Ethan who broke the silence. "You don't look comfortable," he said gently. "I'm not sure I'm supposed to be here," Maya replied honestly. "Neither am I," he admitted, surprising them both. "But I'm tired of doing only what I'm supposed to do." She studied him then, not the billionaire whose name appeared in business magazines, but the man sitting across from her, sleeves rolled up, eyes tired, posture unguarded. For the first time he didn't look untouchable. They ate slowly, conversation hesitant at first, then gradually easier. Maya spoke about growing up in a small apartment, about watching her father work himself to exhaustion so she could attend good schools. She spoke about her dream of becoming a therapist, helping people navigate trauma she knew all too well. Ethan listened intently, the way powerful men rarely did when someone without status spoke. "I had no idea," he said quietly. "That's the point," she replied. "People like me aren't noticed. We just function." The words landed harder than she intended. Ethan leaned back, exhaling. "I've built buildings that change city skylines. But somehow, I missed the person who's been keeping my house running." That night, something subtle shifted. Over the following days, Ethan began coming home earlier. Not with grand gestures, but with presence. He'd ask Maya how her day was. He'd remember small details. He'd offer rides to the hospital when she visited her father, sitting quietly in uncomfortable waiting rooms, speaking to nurses with a kindness that surprised everyone, including himself. Her father noticed immediately. "That man looks at you like you're sunlight," he said softly one afternoon. "And you look at him like you forgot you were allowed to be happy." Maya wanted to deny it, but she couldn't. Ethan insisted on covering her father's medical costs, not as charity but as support. "You do the same for someone you cared about," he said. She resisted. He persisted. Slowly, impossibly, she let herself accept help. Then the world found out. It started with whispers among the staff. Lingering glances. Changed tones. A driver she barely knew muttered something under his breath. A visiting executive's assistant smirked openly when Maya passed. But the real storm arrived in heels. Vanessa Hart. She arrived unannounced one Saturday morning, draped in designer clothing and entitlement. She had once been engaged to Ethan, before leaving him for someone wealthier, louder, more convenient. She took one look at Maya standing near the staircase and laughed. "Oh," she said coolly. "You've replaced me with the help." The words cut like glass. Vanessa wasted no time spreading poison. Society blogs picked up the story. Headlines twisted half-truths into scandal. Billionaire CEO entangled with housekeeper. Power imbalance raises eyebrows. Photographers appeared near the hospital. Comments followed Maya everywhere. Gold digger. Opportunist. Disgrace. Ethan's board began expressing concerns. His mother called in panic. Investors whispered. One evening, Maya stood in the doorway of his office, staring at his tense expression as he scrolled through headlines. "I should leave," she said quietly. "I'm hurting you." He looked up sharply. "No," he said. "They're hurting us." "This isn't my world," she whispered. "I don't belong here." Ethan crossed the room in 3 strides, taking her hands. "You belong wherever you choose to stand," he said fiercely. "And I'm choosing you." But outside those walls, judgment was growing louder. And karma was watching. They tried to humiliate her in public, not knowing who she really was. The first confrontation didn't happen behind closed doors. It happened in public, where humiliation hurt the most. Maya noticed the shift the moment she walked into the charity fundraising gala. The room was packed with polished smiles, tailored suits, and quiet judgment disguised as civility. Conversations paused. Eyes followed her. Some openly. Some pretending not to. She wore a simple navy dress, elegant but understated. Nothing flashy. Nothing that screamed wealth. She had chosen it deliberately. She didn't want to look like she was trying to belong. Vanessa Hart stood near the center of the room like a queen presiding over her court, champagne glass raised, green eyes sharp with satisfaction. The moment she spotted Maya, her smile widened. "Well," Vanessa said loudly, just loud enough. "I suppose anyone can get invited these days." A few nearby guests laughed uncomfortably. Maya felt the heat rise in her chest, but she stayed silent. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Vanessa," he said coolly, "this event is about funding pediatric care. Not egos." "Oh, relax," Vanessa replied sweetly. "I'm just fascinated by upward mobility. It's so inspirational." The insult hung in the air. Maya excused herself quietly, heading toward the balcony, her hands trembling despite her calm expression. She didn't cry. Not yet. She refused to give them that. Behind her, conversations reignited, but sharper now. "She's clearly using him. This will end badly. He's embarrassing himself." What none of them noticed was the man standing near the back of the room, gray-haired, observant, eyes narrowed in recognition. Dr. Samuel Klein. One of the country's most respected trauma psychologists. Board member of multiple hospitals. A man who had quietly changed mental health policy for decades. And Maya's former mentor. He stepped forward slowly, studying her profile as she leaned against the railing outside, breathing deeply. "Maya Collins?" he asked gently. She turned stunned. "Dr. Klein?" A smile spread across his face. I thought it was you. I recognized the posture before the face. They embraced briefly, the tension in her shoulders easing for the first time all evening. What are you doing here? She asked. I could ask you the same, he replied with a knowing look. Inside, Vanessa noticed the interaction and frowned. Who is that? She asked someone nearby. Dr. Klein, came the answer. Why? Vanessa's stomach tightened. Inside again, Ethan found himself surrounded by board members questioning his judgment. He listened politely, then raised his voice just enough to be heard. Before we continue speculating, he said, perhaps you should learn who you're talking about. The room stilled. He gestured toward Maya, now walking back in beside Dr. Klein. This woman, Ethan said, voice steady, was accepted into one of the most competitive graduate programs in the country. She left not because she failed, but because her father was dying and needed her. Murmurs rippled. Dr. Klein stepped forward. Maya Collins, he said clearly, was one of the most gifted students I have ever taught. Her research on trauma resilience is still cited in my department. The fact that she chose caregiving over career does not diminish her worth, it defines it. Silence. Vanessa's smile cracked. And for the record, Dr. Klein continued, eyes sharp, any institution that looks down on compassion should question its own values. Applause began slowly, then grew. Cameras turned. Phones lifted. The narrative shifted in real time. Vanessa took a step back, face pale. That night, articles rewrote themselves. Billionaire CEO defends brilliant partner against classist attacks. Woman shamed for her job turns out to be a respected scholar. But the greatest moment came later, when Maya stood alone by the pool again, staring at her reflection. For the first time she didn't feel small. She felt seen. And karma was no longer waiting. She was called the help, one last time, and karma struck instantly. The backlash came faster than anyone expected. Within 24 hours of the gala, opinion fractured into two camps. Some praised Ethan's public defense. Others accused him of romanticizing a narrative that made wealthy people uncomfortable. Business analysts debated whether compassion had a place in leadership. Commentators dissected Maya's past as if her life were a case study instead of a human story. And Vanessa Hart watched it all with fury simmering beneath her perfect exterior. She wasn't finished. The final blow came at the annual Global Impact Forum, a conference broadcast live to millions. Ethan was scheduled as the keynote speaker, an honor reserved for industry leaders considered beyond reproach. Vanessa knew exactly where to strike. Moments before Ethan took the stage, a moderator received a sealed envelope. Inside were documents, screenshots, and a carefully framed accusation. Abuse of power, inappropriate workplace influence, manipulation. The room buzzed. The moderator hesitated, then asked the question live. Mr. Blackwell, she said carefully, how do you respond to concerns that your personal relationship began under unethical circumstances? Every camera zoomed in. Maya stood off stage, heart pounding. Ethan didn't look at the moderator. He looked at Maya. And then he smiled. I respond, he said calmly, with transparency. He stepped aside. Maya, he said into the microphone, will you join me? The room gasped. Vanessa's face drained of color. Maya walked onto the stage, slowly, steadily, refusing to shrink. The lights were blinding. The silence deafening. Ethan took her hand, not possessively but equally. This woman, he said, was not hired because she was powerless. She was hired because she was capable. And before she ever worked for me, she was already exceptional. Maya took a breath. Then she spoke. I was judged by my job, she said, voice clear. By my income. By where I stood in a room. But worth isn't assigned by titles. It's revealed by choices. She turned to the audience. I left my academic career to care for my father. Not because I was weak, but because love required sacrifice. Dr. Klein appeared on screen behind them via live video. I supervised Maya's research, he said. And I stand by her integrity. Vanessa stood abruptly. This is a performance, she snapped. She manipulated him. Ethan turned. Vanessa, he said evenly, you left because success bored you. She stayed when life got hard. Security gently escorted Vanessa out as cameras followed her every step. The audience rose in applause. Stock tickers surged. Within hours, Vanessa's sponsors dropped her. Her consulting firm released a statement distancing themselves. Karma didn't whisper. It roared. That night, Maya and Ethan returned home to the same pool where everything began. I was afraid, Maya admitted softly. So was I, Ethan said. But courage isn't absence of fear. It's choosing truth anyway. She looked at the water, then at him. I don't want to be hidden. You never will be again. She walked in invisible. And walked out as his equal. The morning after the forum felt different. Not louder. Not dramatic. Quieter, but heavier in meaning. Maya stood in the kitchen of the mansion, sunlight spilling through the tall windows, watching steam rise from her coffee. For the first time since she'd begun working here, she wasn't dressed in a uniform. She wore soft clothes of her own choosing, her posture relaxed, her breathing unguarded. She no longer felt like a guest in someone else's life. Ethan joined her, still in a simple shirt instead of a suit. No phone. No assistants hovering. Just him. Do you regret it? He asked gently. She looked at him, surprised. Standing on that stage? Letting the world see you. Maya thought for a moment. Then she smiled. I regret that I ever believed I had to stay small to survive. News outlets continued buzzing, but the tone had changed. Where there had been accusation, there was admiration. Where there had been mockery, there was reflection. Comment sections filled with stories. People sharing moments when they'd been dismissed because of their job, their background, their silence. Maya became a symbol she never asked to be. And then something unexpected happened. Universities reached out. Mental health foundations contacted her. One hospital board asked her to consult on patient-family trauma support programs. Dr. Klein called her personally. You never stopped being brilliant, he said. You just paused. Her father watched the coverage from his hospital bed, eyes misty. They see you now, he whispered. But I always did. Weeks later, Ethan called a staff meeting, something he had never done before. Maya stood beside him, nervous but steady. I built my success on efficiency, Ethan said. But I failed at humanity. That changes today. He announced new policies. Fair wages, education grants, healthcare coverage for every employee. The room was silent, then emotional. This wasn't charity. It was justice. Later that evening, Ethan led Maya back to the garden, where soft lights illuminated the path beside the pool. The same pool where everything had begun, with fear, secrecy, and vulnerability. He stopped and turned to her. I don't want to protect you, he said. I want to stand with you. He knelt, holding out a simple velvet box. Maya Collins, will you walk through this world with me as my partner, in every way that matters? Tears filled her eyes. Yes, she said. The ring wasn't the headline. The respect was. Months later, Maya stood in front of a classroom, not as the help, not as a scandal, but as a guest lecturer invited to speak about resilience, dignity, and unseen strength. She began with a simple sentence. Never underestimate someone just because they are quiet. The applause lasted a long time. That night, as she and Ethan stood together by the pool once more, Maya looked at her reflection in the water and smiled, not because she'd become powerful, but because she'd always been worthy.